As President Biden's COVID-19 vaccine effort ramps up, religious-based conspiracy theories surrounding the vaccinations are exploding on social media. Some creators have been posting dramatic videos where they make false claims about the vaccine containing microchips or ingredients associated with the devil. Others often refer to masks and vaccines as an indication of a biblical symbol called the mark of the beast. Social media platforms have been able to ban a lot of this content, but it's become increasingly more difficult to enforce. For more on this, let's bring in Elizabeth Dwoskin. She's a Silicon Valley correspondent for The Washington Post. Hi there, Elizabeth. Thanks very much for being with us. So as we said, when it comes to this type of misinformation, a common theme is that these public health measures have to do with the, quote, mark of the beast. What more can you tell us about that?
It's like the mark of the beast is a term from the Bible, from Revelations, that refers to in the end times, the Antichrist will test Christians by giving them a mark. And what's interesting is over the last year, if you think about the tumult that has, been American society for the last year, many people are interpreting that as a sign of the end times. And so there has been misinformation circulating that there's a microchip in the vaccine. This is total misinformation, and it's a distortion of comments made by Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. It's a total distortion. I explain it in the story. And so the way that the Bill Gates microchip storyline is now fusing with the mark of the beast storyline is people say that the microchip is the mark of the beast that will signal the end times.
And Elizabeth, why is this type of information so difficult to police?
And I'm going to laugh as I'm saying it, by the way. I know it sounds probably really out there to you. So what I'll say is, though, probably if you start talking to people, you'll find that a ton of people have someone in their family who believes this. And it's all over social media, which gets to the tech companies. The tech companies, it was very big on TikTok, this mark of the beast hashtags. As a result of some of my inquiries, they actually banned those hashtags. Facebook banned the mark of the beast terminology, they told me, in December. They weren't quite transparent about it at the time, but they say that they did. But it's been circulating over the last year and particularly spiked on two incidents. One, when the vaccines received FDA approval in December, you saw a lot of conversation about this. And then last summer, Kanye West said that he believed the vaccine was the mark of the beast. And unfortunately, that kind of misinformation caused a spark in searches, Google searches and Facebook searches and conversations about the term. So you can really see how the impact of celebrities and civic leaders very much impacts the conversation that people are having.
And Elizabeth, you also write that some of these religious-themed conspiracies are linked to the QAnon movement. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so that's one of the most interesting parts about this, actually, is there was a report I saw in December from a misinformation analytics firm called Signal Labs. And they found 12,000 references to Mark of the Beast in terms like luciferin, because the devil is 666, and people claim inaccurately that there is 666 in some of the compounds associated with the vaccine. Anyway, they picked up all this kind of chatter, like 12,000 mentions about this terminology across the internet, including a lot on Twitter. And if you remember, after the Capitol riot, Twitter took this really big action to crack down on QAnon. Now, step back. Twitter had claimed they had done a crackdown last summer. So I was surprised, as someone who covers this, to see that there was so much that still slipped through the cracks to where they had to have a second crackdown after the Capitol riot on January 6th. And what Signal saw is that when the QAnon accounts were banned and suspended from Twitter, those when they went back to try to find the mark of the beast and luciferin and a lot of the extreme Christian conspiracy theories, they found that those statements were suspended because the accounts were being suspended, which suggests that there's a strong overlap between Trump supporting groups Christian nationalism and kind of fringe Christian conspiracy theories, and the QAnon conspiracy theory, which is a conspiracy theory that has been affiliated with violence, including at the Capitol riots.
So, Elizabeth, given this sort of misinformation landscape or disinformation landscape, some might say, how are religious leaders actually responding to these types of extremist claims?
So this was like the most interesting part of the story, because if you search terms like Mark of the Beast, like when I was researching the story, if you search terms like Mark of the Beast online right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you're going to find a huge amount of conversation in both directions within religious communities. So one of the top videos that I found was a video by a pastor in Riverside, California. It has over 200,000 views, and he's asking, is the COVID vaccine the mark of the beast? And he says, here's why he thinks it's not. He refutes the idea. He's a mega church pastor. Another woman I spoke with was an epidemiologist at a Christian university in Texas, and she is married to a Baptist pastor as well. And she has a really popular Facebook page where she talks all about COVID from the perspective of a scientist and also as a Christian. And she also is finding that there's a host, tens of thousands of people are part of this Facebook group. So this is like a very, very active discussion online about this. And she found that a lot of people were bringing up things like Mark of the Beast and saying, if you take the vaccine, it doesn't mean that you have faith in God. That's what she said, that there's this strain of belief out there that if you take the vaccine, you're somehow weak, and it means you don't trust God. And then you see that going into this influencer community online on like TikTok, like you see all these music videos of young Christians basically reenacting scenes where they take the vaccine and they die and their faces are covered with blood and there's music playing in the background. They're like music videos. And so what you really see is a very like robust conversation online from all the spectrums. And that's why it's actually a very sensitive topic for tech companies, because we know that one of the best ways to combat misinformation is to hear about to hear counter arguments within your own community. And so you don't want to cut out the counter arguments too. You want to have the counter arguments up, and you also don't want people to feel they're censored. And I talked to a lot of people who were posting on this content who said that they were just raising questions and their stuff got taken down. And that brings up this issue of how hard it is for the technology companies, how basically they're just terrible at understanding the nuance in these kinds of conversations. The difference between a person raising a question innocently, a person raising a question, but whose goal is to really put out misinformation. The intent is really important. How do you discern intent? Or people who are raising the question to refute. It's like one of the hardest areas of misinformation to police.
Yeah, I mean, what you're spelling out, Elizabeth, is really it's so complex, made even more so because we are all consuming information in the midst of a pandemic, where conversations that you might normally have, for instance, in person over a cup of coffee, are now having to take place largely online, where, as you note, it is very, very difficult to sort of moderate a lot of that content. Really fascinating piece, Elizabeth Dwoskin. Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.